everybody. With that music's getting louder and louder, but we're rocking out. My name is Andy Bernstein, and you are listening to and watching The Map, the Mental Health and Addiction podcast. It's a weekly podcast about having open and honest discussions around mental health and addiction, which obviously is a very important topic right now that currently affects 1 in 5 Americans. And joining us as always is our esteemed co-host, the one and only Willie Drinkwater. And Kristen Perry Long is not with us today. She is on assignment. So it's Willie and I holding down the reins here. Willie, who are you?
Who am I and what am I doing here? Some existential questions to start.
That's right. That's right.
I am a person in long-term recovery of my own, but I'm an educator for UMass Boston in the Addiction Counseling Education Program. I also have a private practice where I see people with addiction with co-occurring disorders, with mental health disorders, and co-occurring dual diagnosis is the expectation in addiction, not the exception. So we need to look at the whole mental picture when we're working with people. So.
There you go. And you also come from the world of comedy. Yes. Where you've we're in the Rock with the Rock of Boston, WBCN,
the Rock, 104.1 FM.
And you transferred, so you
have to have a sense of humor. Got to have a sense of humor in addiction and mental health.
Especially right now, right?
Oh yeah, well yeah, especially now with the politics going on and COVID, and people are really stressing out.
Yeah, for sure, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But we have to salute and thank our veterans today with it being Veterans Day, and thought it would be appropriate before we get to our guest. Well, let me tell you who I am first. My name is Andy Bernstein. I have worked in media and broadcasting for over 25 years. I created a recent radio show with former hockey player Kevin Stevens, and I've become very passionate about this field and trying to use whatever knowledge that I've had in the broadcast industry to try to spread the word and end the stigma around addiction and bring it to light. So that's me. But as far as back to Veterans Day, did you know that many of our veterans are actually struggling greatly with PTSD and other mental health issues? And
absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. And as a matter of fact, a recent report actually came out in 2017, which is the latest data, says that 17 veterans a day commit suicide.
Yeah.
And their factors include economic disparity, homelessness, service connection, finding, their disability status. And so, I thought it would be important to let people know that there are resources out there. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, in Providence, there is they're doing a program, and there's other programs obviously around the country, and you can visit the VA website, which is we'll have to get that website to you before the end of the show, but there is a website where you can get a lot of resources and information about mental health. And so just throwing that out there. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, I mean, also like a person like Lisa Najavitz, who's down at McLean's, who does research there. She also is over at Harvard Medical School. With Lisa Najavitz has been doing a long-term longitudinal study of Gulf War vets. Also, Depression Bipolar Support Alliance down at McLean's, which is prior to COVID, the meetings were on Wednesday nights. They're virtual now, but Lisa had begun within DBSA a veterans group too. So
yeah,
added resource.
Yeah, it's really important. So if you are you personally or a loved one needs support, you can visit the va.gov. Its website is up there, and you can kind of look up information and resources. So it's a pretty alarming statistic, and I don't know a lot of people know about it. So, these guys are fighting for us, and so that's the least we can do is give more information about how we can help. So having said that, let's go across the pond and meet our special guest today. Her name is Julianna Weeder. She is an award-winning complementary therapist, Indian head massage specialist. She's an author, teacher, trainer, public speaker, fundraiser, story massage instructor, and yoga practitioner. She is also the founder of Rainbow Kids Touch Therapy and Relaxation, which has been recognized as a learning destination by the Children's and Children's University. So welcome to the show, Julianna.
Welcome in.
Julianna, your sound is muted.
Unmute. There we go. Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes, we can now. Yes.
Technical.
So where are you, Julianna? You're in North London?
I live in a place called Exmoor in the southwest of England. It's a beautiful wild place.
Near
Gorgeous.
Midsummer? Near Midsummer?
No, we're in autumn. My favorite.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
absolutely ablaze with so many colours. It just fills me up. It's just beautiful.
That's awesome. And it's amazing that we can actually talk to someone from London via video conference. That's how far we've...
Isn't it?
I know. It's amazing. It
I
is.
was saying to William yesterday, it's so funny, the flip side of everything locking down, because of COVID, the world shut down. But in many ways, it's all opened up in ways like this. And
Yeah.
we're all reaching out to each other. And it really does feel like a global community.
Totally. So I think that's interesting in the way you choose to look at this whole thing. It's like, is it a bad thing, or can we make light of, what's available right now, given
Can we take the positives out of it?
right the circumstances and finding a silver lining? So I'm going to let Willie, because you guys know each other,
Yeah.
and I'm the new kid on the block. I'm going to let Willie take over and talk to you about kind of the work you're doing and the different practices that you have put together. So Willie.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm absolutely thrilled.
Oh, it's a pleasure. With
Thank you.
Julianna and I first connected on LinkedIn, and what I didn't let her know is I actually had a sister who passed away several years ago, but my sister was special needs. So I always have an eye open when I see things on LinkedIn pertaining to special needs. And as I was going through what Julianna was presenting on LinkedIn, I was thinking to myself, everything she's presenting is not only for people with special needs, but people across the board. So, I became fascinated by it. She has a great YouTube channel too. Sometimes I go there and I'll just tune in because just watching the YouTube brings me down and calms me down and stuff. So it's really interesting. But I wanted to have her on. I'm going to do a little product placement while we're talking and stuff.
Oh, oh, lovely. You don't have to do that.
No, but yeah. So we'd like to learn more about what you're doing, over there and stuff. And eventually, when you come over here, when COVID is through, we'll get your various techniques going over here. So it'd be
that
great.
would be wonderful.
But tell us about your background and how you got started with everything and where you're at the present.
Goodness. Yeah, well, that's a very interesting story. Well, my background, goodness me. Well, I studied at university. I got French and history degree. French because I love talking and communicating in other cultures, and history because I've always seen history as high story. And what I was interested in was that human spirit and the things we come through. And I've thought a lot about that during these times of COVID, actually. But it was like studying psychology, but having the stories, the colour, the people. So that's why I was drawn to that. And that thread has followed through. I've also always written since I was 9 years old. So again, that's followed me through my life. All these little pieces of the jigsaw come together. Anyway, after I graduated, for a really, really brief period, about a year, I worked on magazines, Vogue and Brides, World of Interiors, and I loved it because I wanted to write. So, but actually I wasn't writing for them at that point. I was a tiny cog in the wheel. I was just on the advertising, but I was hoping in my dreams I could make the leap over to editorial. So I'd barge in on all their meetings and come up with ideas and, so that's always stayed with me. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, I've got 4 children. Actually, I've got millions now, but 4 biological children. And my second son was born with autism. And he's also got other gifts. He's amazing at writing. He's just so connected to nature. He's got the most wonderful 3D way of seeing the world. And he has been, all my children are my teachers, but my journey with Ollie was particularly eye-opening because I was learning as I went. He's 23 now. So 23 years ago, I mean, I'd never even heard of autism. And I know that sounds really ignorant, but I hadn't. But I knew my little boy was different from the minute he was born. I could feel it when he was in the womb. Don't ask me how, mother's instinct. But it was very obvious from the minute he was born that he was very, very different. He was in total overwhelm with lights, sounds, just everything. It was a real sensory overload.
Mm-hmm.
He went through school, but he was very tall for his age. He still is. He's 6'4" now. I don't know how I managed it because I'm only 5'3.5". But anyway, there you go. Must have been something in his little. Because he's very bright, which a lot of people with autism are, has a higher than average IQ, and because he was tall, his autism just wasn't recognized. It was, because it wasn't like he was in a wheelchair or people could see it, they thought it wasn't there. So, and because he was big for his age, expectations were higher because he looked older than he was. He had absolutely no idea how to read people. There was no social cognition. He couldn't read social cues. He would play alongside other children when he was little, but not with them. He couldn't role play. He couldn't do any of that. And I mean, now he can do all of those things. He's busted all of those myths. So anyway, at 9 years old, I finally, after lots and lots of battling, got a diagnosis. And I never told Ollie that's why we were going to the hospital. I said, it's just a checkup. Because throughout, I knew I just wanted him to be Ollie. And my background at that time was I had married really, really quickly after coming out of university. And it was only ever my second ever boyfriend. Times were different. And I married him really, really, really quickly, far too quickly. And the marriage was extremely abusive on all levels. Luckily, he was away a lot, so we could get up to mischief. Me and the children, it was fab. We made so much magic. But that was the background. So for me, getting that diagnosis of autism for Ollie, and I'm not preaching to anybody because we all have to do what's right for our children. And just as, if you had 10 people in a room with the flu, they haven't all got identical personalities or situations. And it's exactly the same with autism. Autism is just a trait of who, part of what people are. So me knowing that Ollie had autism and knowing my very dangerous background I was living against, and I am allowed to say this because he's been charged and he's serving time for this. I'm really embarrassed to say that, but he is. But I just didn't want you to worry about anything legally. So he's in a very safe place, thanks to the Queen. And so I knew that because my background was a very, very difficult and dangerous one, and we were living on our wits a lot of the time, having to be very industrious, very tenacious, I knew that I absolutely couldn't afford to cushion Ollie and wrap him up in this little world because he was autistic. I didn't even tell him he had autism until he was 13 years old, when I knew he'd have to have mainstream exams, and that would be difficult for him. And that's the only reason why I ever told him. I wanted him to grow up just being Ollie. As I said, autism is just a trait of who he is. And although there are challenges, there are also incredible gifts with that. The same as all human beings. We all have a special need at certain times. We all have strengths. We all have challenges. And I don't mean to sound dramatic, this is just how I was living, because on at least 4 occasions I nearly lost my life, I had to know that whatever happened to me, Ollie, because autism isn't something you have written on your head, people can't see it, it's invisible until you actually spend time with them, high functioning autism. I knew I had to get him to cope and to function and navigate a mainstream world, not just a mainstream school. So his gift was writing, and I really, really, really celebrated that. And he was in gifted and talented throughout first school. So words and books became his friends because he didn't have a social life. Ink was in his veins. Words were his friends. He was passionate and still is about books. He's so well read. And if you don't mind, could I read out a 6-line poem he wrote when he was 12?
Of course.
Sure.
If I keep talking, stop me, because honestly, I could talk for England and America and Italy. It's not a problem. Anyway, he was given a task. And I mean, he writes fabulous poetry, but he was given a task. And bearing in mind with autism, generally, and it sounds horrible to generalize, but very often people with autism don't really like the unexpected to be flung in. That is a bit difficult, and it was for Ollie. So anything he wasn't expecting, he would struggle with. But he was given this assignment in English. It was Valentine's Day, and as I say, Ollie was 12. So it was his last year of middle school. And the challenge was write a love poem to a fly. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. Ollie, within 10 minutes, produced this poem, and his teacher rang me in tears on the break. It's just 6 lines long, and this is what he wrote. I am the fume that lives in your clothes. I am an irritation of love beneath your skin. I come in swarms like a flock of birds. A mist to your eyes, you see a plague of love in me. I am a grain of the dark sky scattered on the stars. Within you is the fly.
Isn't that amazing?
The depth, yeah.
Well, he joined a mainstream college. I've never named the college or the teachers involved. I never will, because I'm hoping that Ollie's journey since then is a learning for them. And that's his biggest triumph. And we're not vengeful people. Not only that, I didn't want to localize and be spiteful. I just didn't want to belittle what is actually a national, if not international, problem in how autism and mental health in general is seen in schools and in the world. So Ollie joined.
If I can interrupt for just a second, that there was that you had people telling you that he'd never be able to do anything.
Well, what happened was he was gifted and talented in middle school.
Yeah.
He had 2 weeks in the Topsail English class at the mainstream college, and his lowest grade was a B for all his assignments in that time. So, which is still really, really high. It was mostly A's and A stars. So he went into school, and this was so cruel. He walked into the classroom and the teacher said, I'm sorry, Ollie, you're not in this class anymore. You have to go to the bottom set English, which is in room, whatever it was. Ollie couldn't navigate timetables. This was an absolutely brutal, unexpected shock. So all of these things combined, he was just stunned and humiliated and heartbroken. So he joined the bottom set English, and I instantly went in and I said, look at his records through middle school. He's got A stars and A's, 1B, that's all since he's joined the college. Why are you putting him in bottom set English? So they organised a meeting for me to attend, and I thought it was with the head of English. And when I walked into the room, there were 8 teachers. So, and unfortunately, because the room was small, they were all behind tables in a curve, and I was in front of them in a chair with no desk. So they didn't plan it like that. It just, you can obviously imagine it was like talking to a wall, and actually it was a wall. Yeah. To a wall. And to cut a long story short, I begged. I've only ever begged twice in my whole life. And I begged, and I read Ollie's poem, The Fly, that I've just read to you. And I said, don't do this to him. It will destroy him. If you put him in bottom set English, you're not just removing his present, but you're removing his future, because his dream since he was 7 years old has been to go to university and do English. And I remember the head of English turned to me and she said, Oliver has autism. He will never achieve. And the most you can ever hope for is two exams, 2 GCSEs in England. And I knew this wasn't true. So I took it up to the next level, county. I took it right up to county level, Somerset County. The special needs coordinator had told me that the lady I need to speak to wouldn't speak to people like me, that she only would speak with schools. So I thought, well, I'm going to take my sandwiches along. I've done this twice before. He really knows about this because I did it when I got my book deal. I'm a little bit cheeky. So I took my sandwiches along and a book. I thought, no one can arrest me for eating sandwiches and reading a book. And the receptionist said to me, who have you come here to see? And I said the lady's name. And by absolute blessing, she happened to walk into reception at that moment. And she said, well, I'm Eileen McHale. So I told her Ollie's story, showed her his poems, and she instantly gave me the funding for Ollie to be in top set English, but just access things like the reading comprehension and lining up booklets, things he couldn't do, in a different format. So I had the funding and I was thrilled. So I went back, they still wouldn't put Ollie in top set English. And I said, well, what's happened to his funding? And I don't know if this happens in America, but in England, this happens. So it's a really important thing to share. Funding, when you get funding for your child in England, it does not come with your child's name on the pot. It's put into a big melting pot of everybody, and it is not spent on your child. So I always share this because I say to people, it's legal, it's not ethical, but if you get funding for your child, which you will have to really fight for because they don't like to give it in England, it's a fight. It can take a year just to get an EHCP, an individual education plan.
Yeah.
So when you get that funding through, hold the school or academy accountable and make sure they spend it on your child so you do not have to go through the heartbreak that Ollie and I went through. Because I had to come back then and tell him, I'm sorry, Ollie, I don't know another way forwards. For the first time in my life, I'm stumped. I don't know what to do. And I always remember that day we told him, and my oldest son, James, was with me. And we told him, and he was grey. He was grey. Just, I've never seen that colour on a human being. And he just very slowly, he just looked at us and he went, but he wasn't focusing on us. It was like he wasn't in his body. And he just said, that's okay. And he went upstairs. And James and I, my oldest son, didn't even need to speak to each other. We just knew. And I don't know the exact moment, but both of us started sprinting up the stairs. And when we got to Ollie's room, because my house is on 3 floors and Ollie's room is right at the top. When we got there, Ollie was in the fetal position, rocking, and there was blood streaming down his right arm. And I noticed his window had been punched out. And this is the most gentle, he's terrified of violence. Don't forget our background was that. So he was terrified of that. So this is how desperate he was. This is what they'd done to him. He was rocking. It was awful. And he was repeating over and over again, I'm disabled, aren't I, Mummy? I'm broken. And the sounds that came from him were animalistic. It was primal. I mean, it was sobbing, but it you know, when
retching, retching.
Or
yeah.
donkeys make that sound, don't they? And it was like that. He sounded like an animal. It was primal grief. And it was the worst sound I've ever heard from any of my children. And I got on the floor with Ollie. And funnily enough, I started massaging him. I had my hands around his face and I said, look at me, Ollie, look at me. Come back, get back in the room, get back in your body. Yeah. Look at me. And he was focusing on me. And I said, do not ever say the word disabled to me again. You are not disabled. You are differently abled and your gifts are tremendous and we're going to fight. And I began my massage work at that point with Ollie to try.
That was the start of it?
That was the first bit. And within 6 weeks, the progress Ollie made was so tremendous. And just to put you in the picture, I'd actually had my foot broken in 3 places and my ex-husband had gone away for weeks and I had £50 to survive on. So I thought, right. So I rang up my best friend. This is quite funny and it's the absolute truth. I waited for the bin men to come along, that take all the garbage away, take the rubbish away. And I waited on the bottom step of my path. And I said, could I please throw my crutch in your big munchy thing, at the back of the truck where you throw in the rubbish? Sorry, I'm not very technical about a transport. And they said, well, we're not really supposed to take things like that. I said, okay, health and safety or something. I said, what about if I throw it in? And they went, yeah, you can do that. And I remember lobbing it into the back of that truck and watching it be munched. Yeah. And we were all cheering. It was so funny. So then I had to wait for them to go away because I'd only broken my foot 4 days before, and I was in agony. So I crawled, very undignified, up my path, back into my house. And I rang up my best friend and I said, right, could you please bring me the highest dose ibuprofen and some spray tan? And she said, and a pair of your shoes. And she said, Julianna, what are you doing now? I said, I'll explain when you get here. So she got to my house. My foot looked like a winter cabbage. It was just purple and green and swollen. So I put spray tan on that because I'm vain. And on the other one, this is the absolute truth. I then put on her shoes because I'm only a size 5 and she's a 7. So I could fit my big swollen broken foot in her shoe. And then she had to help me. It was so undignified, into a pair of bootleg jeans, that flare a bit at the bottom.
Yeah.
And that woman, honestly, I love her to bits. She drove me to all the schools in my local area and I worked for free every single day for 8 hours a day. And sometimes I'd be kneeling behind the students and I would be crying. I'd be crying silently, with the sheer pain. I don't know how I got through it.
So,
But
yeah.
within 6 weeks, I was being paid because no one had ever heard of this work. I said, it's worked on my son. You've got to give this a chance. It's for free. You make your own records and your own judgments.
And that was the start of
And
the
that
Indian
was
head
the
massage. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. Can I chime in? Just because I'm listening to you. My sister has a son who has Asperger's. And
same as Ollie.
okay, so here's the thing: the kid is incredibly bright. He is annoying. He is annoying.
He's a teenager, is he?
He's 24. He's 24, but he's really like he's figured out a way to start navigating his life. Right? He wants to live in Manhattan or no Brooklyn. He's become an Orthodox Jew, where our family has nothing to do. You know, we're not Orthodox.
You're reformed, right? Reformed.
Not even reformed, but I mean we're there. But what's interesting about my nephew is that he found a community with the Orthodox, and they take him in and they accept him, and there's a lot of structure there for him the time.
That's why he loves it. That's part of the reason why he loves it.
The ritual of having the ability to what's the word I'm looking for to have that
Belonging.
The belonging. And so but my sister, they would take family vacations, but they would do things that he didn't like to do, right? They didn't have the patience nor the dedication to fight for him. So they just basically say, oh, well, he's got special needs. So it becomes almost like a crutch for my sister.
Yes. And I never allowed Ollie to.
I know. And we
because
always
of my
say,
situation.
and so he's in this place right now where he wants to break away from his mom and move to New York. He's going to graduate college. He's going to go to grad school for social work. In spite of my sister, right? My sister couldn't be the worst person in the world for him because she's very dedicated to him, but she can't it's like she can't say you can be anything you want to be, and you can. Yeah, right. And so I hear you talking, and I'm like, you're dedicated and you're fighting and being an advocate for your child, right? In this, and you're not letting the labels.
Now it's for everyone's child.
Right.
It's for everyone's child now.
Right. Right. You don't put the labels on him. You make him believe that he can do this, and I see
labels are jam jars, not people.
Labels
that's something that we've talked about on the show before, is that, labels, you're much more than a label, I mean, you're much more, but people get put into categories, and it's difficult to break out at times. Yeah,
it is. And you get boxed in. And I have a friend who has not developmental disability. She's in a wheelchair, and she will go to hockey games by herself in her wheelchair. She'll go to the Boston Garden by herself. She'll take the subway. She does everything, right? She doesn't use it as a hindrance. But what I've learned is that is it the world is the problem and the way the systems are set up for people with autism, or is it more about like if things were adjusted better to people with autism, then maybe it wouldn't be as big of an issue. Not an issue, but you know what I'm saying? Like
I do. Absolutely.
Yeah, adaptability. We need more. There should be more adaptability in the world.
And inclusion.
Right.
Yes.
And a much greater level of expectation around people with different abilities. That's what kills me. That's why now I've got millions of children, because I see that around them all the time from teachers and it's not their fault. It comes from government level, that the education. It's not good enough just to be aware. You have to be educated about things, and it should be part of all teacher training. We talk about an autism global crisis. It's not a global crisis. It's a massive opportunity to learn. In the UK, at least 3 children per class have autism. They need to be included. They have gifts, they have passions. If you look at the positive growth mindset, the first question with that is, what is your passion? But even that, is called fixations, obsessions. Even our language around that is negative, and it shouldn't be, because when you find someone's passion, you've got them. And that was true of Ollie and his writing. And when the school did that to him, I sent off his work. I was like the worst stalker on the planet. I'm amazed I wasn't arrested. I found addresses of so many authors and entrepreneurs, and to this day, I have 2 big A4 box files. I've had to put elastic bands around them because they're bursting, of all the replies from all the different authors when I sent them all Ollie's poetry. And do you know what? So many of them were saying, Ollie, you're a writer already. We were not writing like you at 12 years old. Others were saying, don't let school define you. And that was, if you imagine Ollie on the Titanic, that was his life raft. That saved his life.
Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry. So one of the other questions I have is, do you find that, you know, because you hear about kids that have autism and the parents are not patient at all. They can't, they really struggle with raising a kid with autism.
Yeah, and I understand that.
But it sounds like you almost need it's almost like a sense of, you personally have to have a sense of self in order to be able to be the advocate for your child, right? You don't respond to, you're not responding to, well, I'm ashamed or I'm embarrassed that my child has this. You know what I mean?
I could be prouder.
What's that?
I couldn't be prouder.
Right. And that's the point, right? Like you feel, you know, like he's my child. He's an extension of me. I'm fighting for him because I don't want to see him suffer, right? So it's almost like a parent almost has to find, and just in my opinion, an inner peace or an inner strength in order to be able to do that. And I'm wondering if that's a struggle for a lot of parents out there.
Do you know, it was a struggle for me, and just, you know, I wasn't born with all this. You know, I didn't start my journey with Ollie with all this information. You know, I did struggle, and I'm really ashamed to say this, but I'm going to be honest, because I have to do things with integrity. But when I got the diagnosis for Ollie when he was 9, I cried, because this A word, autism, was terrifying because of all the stigma surrounding it. And a massive part of my work around autism, special needs, mental health is to remove that stigma and to raise the level of expectations and to actually change your neurological pathways and the grey matter in your brain, to shrink the grey matter around the fear centres and to boost it around memory and learning and those higher brain functions, which you can do. And I tell all the kids I work with, don't let teachers define you. Don't let anybody define you.
You define you.
Physically stops growing at 18, but it's like a muscle, and you can challenge it and grow bits and shrink bits, and it's yours to do with what you want. And you can develop your strengths. You can be who you want to be, because you are in charge of your brain, and you are. And just because we surrounded Ollie with that belief, and believe you me, I had massive heartbreaks, moments. I remember going into my therapy chalet before I turned it into a therapy chalet and wailing with grief, because I didn't know who to. I had no support whatsoever. My family lived 250 miles away. My ex-husband was often absent. Yay! Sorry. And, you know, so I had no support. I learned on the job, and I fought as I went, and I made mistakes and I learned from them. And that's why I do so much public speaking for free, because I don't want any other family to go through what I went through with Ollie. And I share that knowledge I've gained to help. But interestingly, there are some families I work with, and when they see their child begin to bloom and develop, how can I put this without sounding awful?
It scares them.
It takes away their control.
They want their child to remain where, you know, because
that's what I'm saying. It's
like having a child with that label.
It's a projection of them. It's like, I don't know, because I've been through so much with my child. I can't go back to saying, oh, my child can actually go off and make it on his own, or have the ability to make it on his own. You know,
I think the thing we see around here too is when you first get the diagnosis, you get you get some families that want to hide it. They want to hide it. No, that can't be true. And, no,
Yeah.
that's not the way it is. And,
Yes.
there's a denial factor because
Yeah.
of trying to trying to live up to an image.
My sister has had
stigma thing again.
Well,
It's
that's
that
my
stigma.
sister. She can't. She'll be like, "Oh, he drives me crazy, this and that," and I'm like, "Well, but he's a grown up. But yet your dynamic between the two of you is so codependent that people have said to him, you're married to your mother, right?" And I'm like, if you don't leave, right, you're gonna be living with your mother till you're whenever. So you're gonna have to. You can do it. You can go out and do it. You navigate the New York City subway system.
Wow.
And you know how to do it, right? You try new things. You're actively applying to grad school. You're doing things, and so don't let your mother keep you in that box.
Exactly. And sometimes, and I know this is a really shocking thing to say, but I'm thinking of one girl in particular who I work with, and she's got the most tremendous gifts for writing, for cooking. She's really fantastic at IT, and she's really grows and blooms, and she's always stopped by her mum, and it comes from a loving place.
Of course.
It's not a healthy love, if you know what I mean. And I don't get everything right, so I feel awful saying that, but I remember one day this girl saying to me, "I need to speak to you in private. I'm so frustrated. I can do all these things and mum won't let me. Mum doesn't believe me. I can't talk to her." And I actually thought in my head, you know what, your autism is not your disability, your mum is. And that's
what I say. So my sister yells at me, "Why would you tell him this? He's tried it twice. It didn't work for him." I said, "So we can try again." Right.
Now.
I said, "Don't we all try? I mean, you keep, sometimes you figure it out. It's like, I didn't do it right this time. I didn't do it right this time, but I can do it right the next time."
Yeah.
And she gets really annoyed.
The beginning of learning. When you look at that positive growth mindset, failure in inverted commas, mistakes, that's where you learn. That's where I've learned most of my knowledge is through making mistakes and learning.
Some of the most successful businessmen I've ever met were people that had one or two businesses that failed, and each time they learned what you needed to do and what not to do, and then they finally, that third business took off.
Failure is not who you are. Failure is not who you are. It's something that happens to you with something that you do. It's a process, right? And it's like, okay, I learned this. Well, this is the way I'm going to do this, right? Some people are experiential learners. I'm an experiential learner. You tell me not to touch the stove, I'm going to touch the stove, right? Just because you told me not to touch the stove, I'm going to do it.
People learn in different ways.
I'll get burned, and I might do it again, and then I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do that anymore. But I need to experience that. So tell us about Rainbow Kids and kind of how you've transferred all this great stuff you've done with Ollie to how have you changed it into and turned it into a way to help others. Yeah.
Well, that's easy to answer. Very, very quickly in my battle for Ollie, and it was a battle, I realized there were so many other kids like him either continually being excluded or desperately trying to function in the day, which is what Ollie used to do, but they'd slip under the radar and drown and pick up additional mental health issues. And kids with different abilities are naturally born with higher levels of cortisone, the stress hormone, and they're 2 to 6 times more likely to pick up an additional mental health issue, with boys being twice as likely as girls. So these are really sensitive statistics. And you were talking about just now suicide, in America. In England, since lockdown, so March 2020 to October, in 6 months, suicide has gone up 39%. That's huge.
That's phenomenal.
So as I was working with Ollie, I realized already that this was going on for a lot of kids and a lot of families. And I thought, Ollie has arrived in my life as a massive blessing. I'm learning so much. This surely can't just be our own little selfish journey in a way. It quickly encompassed lots of children. So going back to when I started my business for free initially, because nobody had ever heard of this and I needed to prove it, and I'm a rubbish businesswoman. I shouldn't say that, but I am. So I did it for free. 6 weeks later, I was being paid. And within 6 months, I had massive waiting lists, and I couldn't physically pack in all the schools. I'd gone off to Belgium to train charities out there. It was incredible how it took off. And it helped me be free because I hid the money in the curtain linings. So I got free. It was fab. Anyway, that aside, my work in schools really started to spread. And some children didn't want the touch. And I always think every child has a song. Every child has a gift that's unique to them. And I will find it. And in 11 years of working, sometimes 7 days a week, 18-hour days are normal for me, 19-hour days, I have learned so much. And I will always find a way to meet that child where they are at. It's not about making them meet me where I'm at. This is about them. So from the off, it's empowering. And those brainwaves, those neurological pathways, that they're in charge, they're empowered, that they're being made. Because if you give a child who's in a relaxed or playful state, a message 6 times, 4 to 6 times, the little dendrites on the end of that make the neurological pathways come apart and reform a positive pathway. So I studied tons and tons of neuroscience because I wanted to ground these therapies in science, because it's the only way I could kick open the doors in the school and get them to listen to me, that this was not about well-being. This was about the memory in your water, the memory in your cells, neurological pathways, getting into the hard drive, and all coming from this positive mindset place. It underlines all my therapies. So I trained up in lots of different therapies, and I thought, well, if a child doesn't like touch, I can show them how to do it on themselves, which I'm doing a lot of at the moment with Corona, with COVID. But there's also yoga, which pushes out all the happy hormones and coping chemicals from the gut, helps you to breathe properly. Because a lot of our kids with different abilities are either mouth breathers or they're reverse breathers. In other words, when they breathe in, their tummies go in. So that also activates the stress hormone. So yoga gets them, their tummies to come out when they breathe in, to open up the diaphragm. Mindfulness, gratitude. You mentioned PTSD earlier. The leading scientist in this field, Robert A. Emmons, PhD, he's an amazing man. I absolutely love his work. And he has actually worked with veterans back from Vietnam. So he's done studies for years, and he's well worth looking up. And he actually proved that if you do 3 practices of gratitude, 3 things that you're thankful for every day, you immediately increase your serotonin, your happiness, confidence, self-esteem hormone by 16%. And he has used this to turn veterans with PTSD back from, Vietnam, other war zones. He's actually helped adjust the grey matter to shrink it around the amygdala, the emotional brain, the fear center. He has actually proven you can shrink that with gratitude. He's done all this neuroimaging, MRI scans, and you can boost it around memory and learning and your frontal lobe, which is all your higher brain functions, seeing consequences, good judgment, self-awareness, self-management, all these important, things that we need as human beings to survive. So I use lots and lots of mindfulness and gratitude. And I've just expanded. The more I've learned about neuroscience, the more I've learned about therapies and looked into what it does and how, this is rooted in science. And you can actually, children are made of 90% water. As adults, full-grown adults, we're made of between 68 and 78% water. And water, as Dr. Emoto Masuro proved, the other way around, Masaru Emoto proved, Japanese scientist. He did lots of studies on water. He wrote a book. It was a New York bestseller, New York Times bestseller, The Hidden Messages of Water. And again, this is all about putting positive messages into these children who are made up of so much water. And he proved, Dr. Emoto, that water carries memory. Our cells in all our bodies carry memories. We've got.
I have read that.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So you hear.
So the therapies encompass all of that, and I have seen amazing things. And my first thing I ever want to find out about a child, the first thing I ever say to them is, "What is your passion?" Don't ask them about school. I don't ask them about any of that, because most of our learning is outside of four walls anyway. I say, what are you really good at? What is your passion? First question of the positive growth mindset. Once you've got that, I can weave it into story massages, yoga stories, story making with pebbles. You know, there's so many ways to bring their passion in and start to get them feeling, you know.
I just saw one that you did on YouTube also.
Oh God,
It was a story massage. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that though.
Yeah.
I love that. But do you see this applying to, you know, I'm sitting there thinking about in the work environment, right, with corporate America. And I've worked with some real doozy bosses, right? I'm telling you, like really not well, right? And do you see that there's a place for this in corporate America where, for adults, for corporations who say, you know what, there's different types of learning, right? Because that's what it sounds like. There's, people learn differently, and one size does not fit all.
Right.
Absolutely not.
So do you feel like it's almost like it would be incumbent upon a leader, a boss, or, a manager to really start to learn how to individualize?
Yes. Build individuals, build a team.
Right.
Be open to learning, be open to new ideas.
Right.
Absolutely. Not somebody who dictates.
Right. My wife always says, she goes, regardless of the money that you're getting paid, the most important thing for you, because I have, I don't know what my issues are, but my wife will say, you need to be working for somebody who gets you.
Yeah.
Most importantly, you need to, if you were working for somebody, you need to work for somebody who gets you and understands you. And I think that's a very rare, not rare, but
sadly it is rare. And it should be commonplace. It should be. And I take all my therapies from Rainbow Kids, I take it into the corporate workplace, and I do team building.
You do. Yeah. Tell us about Rainbow Kids. I mean,
Rainbow, Well, I transfer it to adults too, but they don't know they're doing Rainbow Kids, like older Rainbow Kids.
Okay.
I call it team building days. And it's so interesting when you get real people who are in real conflict. I've heard them say to each other at the end of these days that I do, wow, I just see you so differently. And it is about team building. But going back to Rainbow Kids, it's reinforcing what you've said about working for people who get you. And we should all get each other. So I'm holding space for those kids in however they want, whichever way they want me to do it. I meet them. And everything I do within Rainbow Kids is an invitation. If we do an activity, or I've invented a crazy game, because I'm always thinking with different activities and different things to do, I'll start them off, but they own it. So they will, say we're doing, I don't know, I made up one recently with Jenga blocks, and we were writing down positive mindset questions. What would you do if you failed at that? How could you make your biggest strength even stronger? What did you learn from someone today? Give a compliment to the person on your left. So I started them off with a few things, and then they were writing things. What do you do when you feel angry? Is it okay to feel angry? Well, yes, it is. Rainbow Kids is not all about fluff. We sit with grief, we sit with anger, we sit with confusion, we sit with chaos on the Zoom sessions through Corona. We sit with those things. Yeah, it's okay to be angry sometimes. It's righteous anger. So we face our emotions. What's not good is being an angry person, and they know the difference. So it's emotionally intelligent and socially intelligent, and these are life skills. So what I love,
that's what attracted me to your work and stuff too, is because you can take what you're doing and apply it to adults. It's
absolutely, absolutely 100%. And I love it the most when I take it in on teacher inset training days, because I really feel, and this isn't in an arrogant way at all, I've worked so hard at this, and I just really am there to support the teachers, because everybody has a pop at the teachers, but they haven't had the adequate training. It's government level that needs to be addressed. I'm on my way there, by the way. I'm determined. Remember, I've said this on air now, so it's true. I've got to do it. I'm going to take my sandwiches again and a book, but I'm going to have a word, because they need to realise this. And this one side, this awful sausage factory, this exam system does not help people bloom. It doesn't. And our kids are not all clones. And, you know, I've kind of transitioned now from picking up the pieces of broken children to actually really wanting to go right to the top with this now. And I'm determined. I'm like a little ball bearing. I may be tiny, but honestly, when I'm determined, I'm like a dog with a bone. And
BBC,
I will get there.
BBC.
I will get there, because we need to stop our children being broken in the first place. You know, I read somewhere once, it's much easier to build a child than to repair a broken adult. And you look at all the people who are in therapy.
That's a great line.
I want to talk. That was my next question from an addiction standpoint, and I'll throw to you, both of you. I mean, this is like probably the root of everything right here. I mean, in my opinion, like if you don't learn as a child how to cope and process things that come your way, you're gonna want to like.
Well, Andy, I don't know how many times I've said on the show. You know, you show me someone that's been in the detox 5, 10, 15 times, I'll show you a mental health piece that's not getting addressed.
Of course.
When it's just focuses just on the addiction. It just
right. It's like, okay, how do you cope? Right? How do I process life's curveballs? Right? How do you do that? Because it's going to come. The curveball, right?
To everybody. Like I said at the beginning of the show, everybody has a special need at some point.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to, you know, I go through it all the time. I'm actively trying to learn how to process stuff because I'm trying to deprogram everything I learned in childhood. Everything.
Yes.
Because I didn't get, you know, that special, like, getting me. Teachers didn't get me. They're like, what's wrong with him? Let's put him in special ed. I'm like, I'm freaking brilliant. No, I'm just tooting my own horn. But
it's like the professor that I had in graduate school. And he said, you know, some people, they can be really good people, but they suck as parents. You know, they just don't know what they're doing. You know?
Right. And so where can people, if people want to get in touch with you, I know you're in England, so you really can't.
No, I speak to people all over the world. That's why I do 19-hour days and I love it. I'm on fire with it. So anyone can get hold of me. I just want to help. That's all I want to do is just help.
I love it.
When it comes to addictions, just really remember, you are in charge of your brain, and it's those messages and those patterns you're putting in there, and you can change that. And any good therapist will help you do that and empower you.
Yeah, well, that's exactly we talked about it last week with Stephanie. You know, I know that, you know, in my own life, you know, my struggles a lot were you know, not addressing the things, but I needed it. I wanted it, right? Yeah. I wanted to, you know, I was 32. I looked in the mirror. I'm like, I'm broken, alone, and miserable. How do I fix this? Right? What do I do to fix this? How do I transform my life? So I was 30, whatever. And I saw a doctor who really helped me address my anxiety and depression and ADD. Right.
It's awful. Anxiety is the biggest one, but that's the real disability out of all of that.
Right. And so the COVID, I can't imagine how people who maybe don't have a great relationship or a marriage or whatever, and they're working on top of each other and they're spending so much time with each other. I can't imagine if that's not good.
I know.
How awful life must be.
The dog is the buffer. The dog is the buffer.
Right, because you get on each other's nerves, right? It's like, what did the dog do today?
Let's go for a walk, Charlie.
Did the dog poop? Well, you know, that's the question. I think you get older, you start, did the dog poop? What did the dog do today? You know, and so you...
The thing I like about what Julianna's done is with Julianna, you know, you hear people, you know, always talking about think outside the box. Julianna, you basically created your own box. You know, and you got your own.
Got no lid because I'm always bursting out and thinking.
There you go. Yeah,
love it. You're awesome. You're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. Can you give people your website or more information how they can get engaged with you?
Can I just tell you it's not the end of Ollie's story. It's the beginning of his journey.
Yeah.
Really, really quickly. He has now done his degree. And he did it in creative writing and publishing at his first choice university. He's now done his master's, so he is more qualified than all 8 of the teachers who sat me in the room that day and told me he would never achieve.
Mic drop.
awesome.
Mic drop on that one, right?
Neurological programming.
Yeah.
And he's just about to begin his PhD. So he's going to be my little professor, well, my big Professor Ollie.
There you go. So this is a kid who was labeled as Asperger's. I don't know, and turned it into this, right?
Yeah.
So because he didn't accept what people told him,
And you know something? He was so unwell mentally when they took his English away from him. He nearly did break. And in our darkest hour, we were going through the worst of what we were going through at home. But Ollie was nearly broken. And we had this amazing psychiatrist who came, and Ollie was being tested for psychosis. He was suicidal. It was horrific what he was going through. It was horrific. And anyway, this psychiatrist at the end, when Ollie did his exams, let me share something else, which might be really important.
Okay.
I actually discovered, because I would never take no for an answer. If somebody said no, I would change it into not yet. If somebody said impossible, I'd change it into I'm possible, like Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah.
So I would always find a way. No was just, okay, I'm getting outside this box again. And I found out that it's a human right for a young adult to sit their exams in any place they choose, so long as they have an invigilator and an examiner there. And the school was shocked that I knew this. The college was shocked. And they said, no, that isn't true. I said, yes, it is. And I printed it off for them. So I went to see the examinations officer and I said, you spent Ollie's funding elsewhere. And he looked a bit embarrassed. I said, I know it was legal, but it's not very nice, was it, what you did to my boy? How about you use a little bit of the funding now from your big pot to let Ollie do his exams in the therapy chalet? And that's what Ollie did. So that's something worth sharing if anyone's told.
You guys are awesome. And I just wanted to also say, to your point, I don't know if you've read the book The Element, and it's about finding your tribe in life. And one of the things that they talk about, which was really helpful for me, was there was a young lady who her parents couldn't understand what was wrong with her, right? They didn't know she had learning disabilities. They couldn't figure it out. So they enrolled her in a special school, and they tried to enroll her in a special school, and they were talking to the administrator, the admissions office, and the young girl was like dancing and looking out the window and just dancing. And
that was her passion.
Yeah. And they said to the parents, your daughter doesn't have a learning disability. She's a dancer. And she should be in a school of performing. Yeah. And in a school of performing arts. So this young lady ended up going to work with Andrew Lloyd Webber on plays. I forgot her name.
Goodness.
Yeah. But it was kind of like she, it's like the adapting of, it's like, it's like if your kid goes to a public, or is in some kind of developmental disability class or something, it's like, that's the easy thing, to just put that kid there, right? That's the easy part of it. But the truth is, there's more to that.
Absolutely.
Oh my God,
Absolutely
there's so much more to
story.
that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome. I hope you enjoyed.
Oh my God, I've loved it.
Okay,
just
good.
Really mega quickly, I promise I'll be quick.
Yeah, no, you're good.
The messages and how you form those pathways. You think about our language surrounding different abilities: autistic spectrum disorder, attention deficit disorder. What's that about?
Yeah.
It's differences. It's not disabilities, it's differences. And some of our most amazing people who have changed the world in music, art, technology, Einstein, Edison, Mozart, they were all on the autism spectrum.
Absolutely. You know what? And here's the thing, like for ADD, what I've learned in my old age is
older age.
I can
manage.
I'm a project. I can manage projects, right? I can manage projects because I'm like flipping the channels, right? Let's see what's on this channel. Let's see what's on this channel. Let's see. So it allows me to not be bored, keep my structure in the fact that I'm, involved with so many different projects because, like I got to do the, it's like, I want to learn. I'm curious. I want.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's that positive mindset again.
Right.
Everybody should be flicking all the channels in life. It's not about a destination. It's that journey of learning at all ages, and it's fantastic. I've only just begun.
Fantastic. Will you come back again? Will you come back again?
Oh, please. I'd love it so much.
Okay.
You can bear all the talking.
Love to have that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Julianna Wheaton. And
what's a quick website they can go to for you?
It's www.therapiesforspecialneeds.co.uk. And I don't make any money from my YouTube channel, so I'm not plugging anything. But I have got this YouTube channel where I do things for adults and children, all different therapies that you can access during lockdown.
They're really relaxing to watch.
Apart
They're
from
really relaxing to watch, trust me.
Sorry, they're a bit unscripted. I never watched them back. But that's Rainbow Kids Touch Therapy. Julianna Wheaton, Rainbow Kids Touch Therapy. But it's for all ages. And
the book is on Amazon, right?
It's on Amazon. But just to warn you, it's under Julianna Fennick, which was my married name. So you can Tipex that bit out. All right? But
excellent.
Okay.
Thank you. So that's our show for the week. Thanks to Julianna Wheaton across the pond in the UK.
Thank you.
And Willie Drinkwater, of course.
I'll be in touch.
Be in touch. And thanks to Mike Weber back at Mission Control at Foxboro Cable Access Television. That's the map, and we will catch you all next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Our pleasure.
There's the music.